Welcome back, deep divers. Today we're diving into a situation that so many of you can relate to, especially if you're navigating the sometimes treacherous waters of the dating world.
Treacherous is a good word for it sometimes.
It really is. So picture this. You meet someone online,
Okay, I'm picturing it.
you hit it off, the texts are flying, the emojis are flirty, he's even throwing out compliments.
It's promising so far.
It does, right? And then he does something that seems like a really good sign. He actually suggests meeting up in person. He takes the initiative, says he wants to see you face to face. You grab coffee. Everything seems, I don't know, fine, decent.
Mm-hmm.
And then nothing. Crickets. He disappears. The texts dwindle. He's distant. Cancels plans. And you're left wondering, what just happened? Why can't he just be upfront?
Oh, that's a classic dating conundrum. It's so common and it's incredibly frustrating.
It is. And that's why we're doing a deep dive today into this frustrating phenomenon, trying to understand what might be going on in these situations. We're going to look at some possible explanations, some psychology behind it all, and hopefully give you some insights into how to navigate this kind of confusing situation.
Exactly. You know, it's important to remember that we only have one side of the story here.
Right.
We're going based on what you've told us. We don't know what's going on in his head.
We don't.
But we can definitely explore some common reasons why this kind of thing happens. So let's break it down. You mentioned you guys were texting for about a week before you met.
Right, about a week. And things seemed really, really good. Like, I was actually excited about this one.
And he initiated the meeting. That's an important detail. It suggests he was genuinely interested, at least at that point.
He did. He did. And the meeting itself, it was short. It was just during his workday.
Okay, so a quick coffee date. And you said things seemed fine, but then the behavior changed drastically after that.
Yep.
So let's consider some possibilities. First, it could be a case of what I like to call digital idealization.
Digital idealization.
It's a thing. In online interactions, we often project our own desires and fantasies onto the other person, creating an idealized image in our minds. And that image might not always match reality.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. Maybe, based on your photos and your texts, he had built up certain expectations. Then he meets you in person, and perhaps you didn't quite align with that image he'd created.
So it's like we're filling in the blanks with our own hopes and dreams.
Exactly. And it goes both ways. It's important to be aware of that on your end as well. Remember, you were feeling a strong connection based on those texts. That's totally normal. But it's also important to be aware of something called hyper-personalization.
Hyper what?
Hyper-personalization. It's a fancy way of saying that we tend to overinvest emotionally in online communication. We have more time to craft our responses, to present ourselves in a certain way, so the connection can feel really intense, maybe even more so than it would in person.
That's so true. I spend way too much time crafting the perfect text sometimes.
We all do. But remember, those digital interactions are just a glimpse into the real person. So when you finally meet face to face, it can be a little different.
Okay, so that's one possibility. He built up an image in his head, and I didn't quite match it.
Right. Or there could be other factors at play. Maybe, despite that initial spark, you just weren't compatible in person. Maybe your personalities didn't quite mesh, or the chemistry wasn't there in real life. That happens sometimes. You can have amazing conversations online, but the face-to-face dynamic is totally different.
It's like texting can only tell you so much about a person.
Exactly. Texting is just a small piece of the puzzle. You miss out on all the nonverbal cues, the body language, the shared laughter in the moment. Those are all crucial parts of connection.
Okay, so maybe incompatibility is another possibility.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about external factors. You mentioned he had a brief coffee date during his workday.
Right. He seemed kind of tired, if I'm honest.
Well, there you go. He could be dealing with work stress, deadlines, family issues, or any number of things that could be affecting his mood and his availability. It's important to remember that people have lives outside of dating, and sometimes those lives can get pretty hectic.
Yeah, sometimes life just gets in the way.
It absolutely does. And then there's the possibility, and I know this one might be tough to hear, that maybe after meeting you, he just realized he wasn't as interested as he initially thought he was. It happens. People change their minds. It's not always personal.
I hate to say it, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just lose interest, and it's not really about you at all.
Exactly. Sometimes it's just a matter of timing or circumstances or a million other things we can't control.
But why can't people just be direct about it? It's so frustrating being left in the dark.
Oh, I agree. Ghosting is a frustrating and often hurtful trend. It's easier to avoid confrontation than to have a potentially awkward conversation. But you're right, it leaves the other person wondering and feeling confused.
Right. It would be so much better if he just said, hey, I had a nice time, but I don't think this is going to work out.
Absolutely. Clear communication is always best, but unfortunately, we don't always get that. And I think it's important to examine the role our own perceptions and emotions play in these situations.
What do you mean?
Well, think about how you've interpreted his actions. Could your own anxieties or insecurities about dating be influencing your perception? We all have baggage. We all have past experiences that shape how we see things.
That's a really good point. Our own feelings can definitely cloud our judgment.
Exactly. And we tend to look for information that confirms our existing beliefs. It's called confirmation bias. So if you were hoping this would work out, you might be more likely to interpret his initial actions positively, even if they weren't necessarily indicative of long-term potential.
That's something to think about, for sure. So, where does this leave us? What can someone do with all this information?
Well, first, remember that we're only working with your side of the story. We don't have his perspective. But by examining these possibilities, we gain a deeper understanding of the complexities of dating dynamics. We see that there are often multiple factors at play, and things aren't always as straightforward as we might hope.
It's like dating is a puzzle, and sometimes the pieces just don't fit.
That's a great analogy. And sometimes the pieces fit for a little while and then things shift. But even those experiences, while frustrating, can offer valuable insight into ourselves and how we approach relationships.
So, what's the main takeaway here?
The takeaway is that early dating can be messy and unpredictable. Direct communication is the ideal, but it's not always what we get. So it's important to focus on what we can control, which is our own self-awareness, our communication, and our boundaries. And to remember that even when things don't work out, we can learn and grow from those experiences.
Solid advice. Any final thoughts for our deep divers out there?
Just this. Don't be afraid to talk about these things. Talk to your friends. Talk to other people who are dating. Share your experiences. Get different perspectives. You're not alone in this.
And that's a wrap for today's deep dive. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into a topic that you're curious about. Until then, stay curious, stay compassionate, and remember, dating is a journey, not a destination. See you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.